welcome to another episode of TalkINFOSEC. My name is Clinton Walker, and I've got my esteemed colleague here, Shayla Dos Santos. Shayla, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me once again. Looking forward
Thank
to
you.
this.
Thank you. And today's topic that we'll be covering is diversity and inclusion in the cybersecurity and tech world. It has been said by researchers that women represent approximately 50% of the overall population globally, and only 11% of that percentage is within the cybersecurity workforce. And by a large extent as well, to follow on from that, it is said that compared to men, men are 4 times more likely to hold an executive position rather than compared to their female counterparts. They're 9 times more likely to hold managerial roles than their female counterparts, and they're paid approximately 6 to 10% more than women. And the experience that men face is approximately 240% less in terms of discrimination and ill treatment in the workplace compared to females. Shayla, as a female, how do you feel about that statement?
So you said a number of things in those stats there that resonate highly with me.
Mhm.
So let's start off with sort of my background, my experience in terms of diversity only. So when let's start from the application stage. When I actually apply for a role, I do personally feel as though I actually need to have at least 95% of the qualifications, and
Mhm.
if not 100% of the qualification, and I need to feel comfortable with almost every bullet point stated in that job role.
Yeah.
So when going for a role, it's it's not a case of just getting up and applying for a role. There's actually statistics out there that said, I've actually got one in front of me. Yeah, so women don't apply for a role unless they feel they meet 95% of the expectation of that role.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
in contrast to men that may only have 60% of the actual expectations of the role, and they're more likely to go for that role. Now, that could be held on a number of things. For me, it may be the perception of the company, but more so about feeling confident going into an organization.
Sure, sure.
Now, um, from the way I think, women are more methodical. We think very differently to men. Being a black woman, I have different experiences, different ways of thinking. I've had a different upbringing, so there's going to be a different perspective on how I look at a project, or how I look at when a decision is made. I
Sure.
may take it a little bit slower, or I may be a little bit faster, and look at those ways of making sure that decision is right for the organization, right for what we're doing for our staff, and more importantly, our customers as well.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess it's about firstly understanding not only what we're bringing to the table, but what actually the expectation is of the role and of the business. Yeah, so that answers part of your question, but I know as we go on, there's going to be
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. And I think my other question was, um, why is diversity important in today's world of tech and cybersecurity? And I think you touched on some of those elements as well. And we were talking earlier on other occasions as well, whereby we were talking about diversity of thoughts and ideas in terms of in the workplace and even outside of the workplace. Because if you have a problem and you've got one person, say it's a white person that is dealing with that problem, they will see it one way. If it's a black person, we'll see it the other way. And if it's an Asian person, we'll see it another way. So in terms of diversity of thoughts and ideas, if you put all 3 people together to solve that problem, there's going to be a hybrid approach to whatever that solution and output will be, right? Because
absolutely.
now you're not looking at one track minded approach to the solution and my approach is better than yours. It's looking at how all 3 approaches could become one in a creative manner. What's your take on that?
You mentioned some very good points again there. So a very good example of what you just said was Apple. So Apple, when they released the new iPhone, they had a health app embedded in the phone. So you're able to go in there and actually review your health. Now, they had loads of things in there. Now, where we could see that women were not present in the decision making potentially of that health app was the fact that they didn't include the menstrual cycle. Now, that is something that all women experience before a certain age, that is.
Wow.
That's something that all women experience. And it's like, how can we miss such an integral part of a women's health?
Yeah.
Now, if we had had more women in the room when making that app or making that decision, or potentially just more vocal, outspoken women, we probably wouldn't have had that mistake where customers were the ones actually saying, you have a health app, but you haven't considered menstrual cycles. That's something all women experience before a certain age and after a certain age. So, you're missing a massive part of your customer base. And just little things like that, it just goes to show why it's important to have both sexes in the room, and not just sexes, again, race as well, different age groups, because you're going to get different ways of thinking, different levels of experience. And not everyone may be vocal. So we need to also bear that in mind, that the more diverse you have a team, the more options you're going to bring to the table, right? But Apple's just one example. Women, like I mentioned earlier, we're more methodical, so they say, but level-headed. Again, another good example of that is the way COVID is being managed in countries where they're led by women. There's lots of examples where women bring a lot of different ways of thinking to a table. So we need to bear that in mind when recruiting and when advertising a role, and not limiting it to this is a very manly role, or this is a role for a white middle-aged man.
Yeah. Interesting, because that pretty much give us some headway into the next point and question that I wanted to raise with you was, what are some of the challenges that you think women face in this arena around technology, and by extension cybersecurity, because we're both cybersecurity professionals, right? So in terms of your perspective and where you see that in your lens, what are some of the challenges that you think women face, and by virtue of maybe some of your personal experience could start that conversation?
Okay, so I have a few examples. So I've been in interviews. I'll mention one specific one where I've got to the interview. I thought the interview went really well. And they're just little comments that are made throughout the interview that make you realise, reminding you that you are a black woman. I once interviewed for a cybersecurity role. And towards the end of the interviews, when I realised the comments that were being made throughout the process, and one of them was, "Oh, we've been looking for someone sassy and someone vocal and someone that's going to put everyone in their place," and I just thought, you don't know that that's me, because I know I haven't said anything that actually relates to any of those points that you made. And at that time, I was actually quite young, so I wasn't as confident as I am now. So I know I didn't come across as sassy. So I know that was purely off the basis of my skin color, that I would, what the saying is, sassy black woman, or, and I was being told, we're recruiting you because we want that side of you that you may not have. Just because I'm black doesn't mean I'm going to be sassy. You can find sassy white women, you can find sassy Asian women, but I was being categorized into that box of your qualifications are great, but actually we want the black side of you in this role, which benefited me. At the end of the day, I did get that job, but it does almost feel like you're being limited or being boxed, and it's a case of, actually I'm not. I bring so much more than my skin color, than my gender to this position.
Sure. So in terms of all the challenges then, so that's kind of an example which I'm sure not just women but black men can also resonate with, really, in terms of their color and the perception when you walk through that door. And I myself, I speak with people over the phone when pre-interview stages, etc. And when you turn up for the second stage, they're saying that they, oh, hello, I didn't realize that you were black, and it's like, damn, this is an interview, and that's how you start off the conversation after meeting face to face.
Yeah,
So it's not just for women, but I think black in general. Um, but so interestingly, so I'm just going to flip this again to another level in terms of some of the challenges um, women may face in the tech and cybersecurity arena. I mean, tech has always been dominated by men. But so, do you think that it's a case whereby women don't see themselves in tech and on that career path because the traditional historic part for most, based on our generation, is to be a nurse, be a doctor, you're a teacher, you're a helper in the house, and all the womanly stuff. Do you see that as a? I think that's a challenge. Do you see that as a challenge where they don't see themselves in technology?
absolutely. I think, well, as time has gone on, today in 2020, there are a lot more women. There are many communities of women in technology, which is lovely to see. But I absolutely agree with that. I think there's a lot of instances where women feel as though they don't see themselves in engineering roles, tech roles, or
Yeah, yeah,
any roles that are still quite dominated by men. And that, again, that could be down to upbringing. That could be down to the fact that you've grown up and you've seen your mother be a nurse. You've seen your aunts
here,
become
yeah,
cleaners, or whatever it is that women are expected to go into. So it could be a case like that. For me, my experience was very different. I grew up seeing most of the men in my family in technology, actually, but more importantly, I had aunts and
yeah.
females in tech roles that I was able to look up to and say,
Ah,
oh, okay, that's something I can see myself doing. It's not as difficult as they make it out to be. And why is it that only men can do that? And I ended up falling into this role, or into this industry, but not everyone has that, especially women.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and you're absolutely right. I still walk into rooms today where we're sitting down and 90% of the room is, sorry, 99% of the room is male dominated.
yeah, yeah.
Not to say that there isn't different backgrounds or cultures or races in the room, but there are still many cases where I am the only woman in the room or on the.
Yeah, yeah. That's so interesting because you talked about the people who you see around your family members, females who are in tech. And maybe if they weren't, you wouldn't have think that that's a part that you could get into. And I was reading something a couple of days ago where it said something along the lines of um, your path in life and career and however you progress in life is shaped by the things that happens around you and influence you. So if you're predominantly in a certain community or in a certain group, it's all about how that group and how that shapes you psychologically and subconsciously. So that's quite interesting. So in terms of the dynamics around how we change that, I mean, do you think that if we continue to hire people like us, we will always be the same? So white will hire white people because they, one, might feel safer that way, and two, that's what they've always done. You do what you always do, you get what you always get, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think there's a number of ways that we can change the way in which women look at roles. Um, Firstly, starting off very young. I often go back to my secondary school and primary school
Mm.
and talk to them about, understanding the type of role that I go into, because a lot of the time I say cybersecurity, and little girls and even young men look at me and go, "Oh, cybersecurity! Oh, that's so technical." And that's what is it that you do? What does that actually mean? And it's
Yeah,
purely about understanding and explaining. And I'll be honest, it's about seeing yourself in people that are in these roles. And if the only people that are coming and talking about IT and cybersecurity are middle-aged white men, you're not going to really relate to that.
true. That's
So
so true.
Absolutely, you're not. So getting them at a younger age, secondary school, primary school, getting the parents to, talk to their kids about these industries at home and making them comfortable with it. If we're talking about further down the line, I think organizations have a duty to also put women and men of all races and people of different diverse backgrounds on the front page of, of what their company is looking to offer. Because when I look at an organization now, I didn't realize I was doing this, but when I look at an organization now, I look at the landscape, I look at who's there. And the company I'm at now, one of the most senior roles is the face of it is a woman, and she's a fantastic, phenomenal person at what she does. And it was nice to actually say, oh, okay, I see myself in that. I see myself in her. I can apply for this role, even if I'm not 100% right for this role.
Sure.
But if you don't see that, I was talking to you earlier about the banking industry. The banking industry to me is always, oh, actually, financial. It's going to be middle-aged white men. I don't want to. I don't want to go into that industry.
That's
I,
so
I
true.
want to be a little bit more comfortable in what I do. So,
Yeah,
so it's about, again, pushing the boundaries and about organization, not only waiting until people apply for the role to make those recruitment decisions, but actually when putting the roles out there and putting what their expectations are for these positions, making sure they've been proofread. There's tools and systems now that you actually can upload the description, the role description, and actually say, okay, this is actually very male dominated, the words that are being used, and
yes,
using
yes, and the
these things
tool,
to,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
absolutely, there's so much help out there now that we almost don't have an excuse to
true,
not recruit different races and different
yeah,
sexes as well, so
true,
and
true.
age groups.
Great,
So
yeah,
so
wow,
absolutely,
cool,
in terms of recruitment, I think it's really, really important. And you're going to get a bigger talent pool. You're going to get a better understanding for, instead of getting 100 men or 100 people, you're going to get 1,000 people, because you're going to have people from different races, different backgrounds, and so forth, actually
yeah.
applying for that role. So you're going to have a bigger talent pool to choose from, which means better talent for the organization.
Okay, okay, great stuff, great stuff. So I've got 2 points to cover off before we finish. So you said a lot there, and I want to kind of just pull it back and just to check. Having, if we were to go on the basis of those points that you raised and suggested, do you think it is still the norm that women or men, but we're talking about women in this case, um, black women, do you think it's still the norm for them to feel like they need to work 20 times harder and be more firmer and be more of the angry black woman or the aggressive black woman to really show that, hey, I'm in the room, don't talk over me, or I'm here, I've got something to say? Why does it feel like we're still on that trajectory where we have to prove ourselves 10 times over? um, just to be brief on that before we go into the top tips and what we can.
I will try and be brief. There's so many reasons for that. I was once told, oh, if you have a family and kids, avoid putting the pictures up in, if you have an office or your desk. As a woman, avoid putting those pictures up and avoid telling people that you're in a relationship, because you're going to put out there that you're potentially going to have kids. What does kids mean? Time off. So that's just, again, another example that's come to mind. But to answer your main question, do I feel as though personally I do need to work harder? I'll be honest, the answer is yes. And I don't know, again, that could be down to upbringing. I was always told, work hard, work harder than your counterparts. I was always told that growing up. So I don't know
I
if
was told that as well. It's almost like it's psychological. It's ingrained in you that you
absolutely.
need to be better than them. You need to be better than them, and it's just drilled into you, and it just becomes the norms. Like, right, no matter where you are, you think you need to be 5, 10 steps ahead, and you will naturally you do that without knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's not something I can blame organizations for. That's just our psychological way of thinking. But to answer your question in short, yes, I do feel as though I need to always try and go the extra mile. say that bit more, make sure my opinion is heard. In regards to the aggressive black woman, not so much. I actually go the opposite direction. I avoid being that aggressive black woman because it's not in my nature. It's actually not my personality.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't try and force that in me. There are times where yes, I can be very direct, and I know I can be. But I would hate to categorize that as the sassy or angry black woman.
sure,
So
sure.
yes, to answer your question in short, I do have that ingrained in me. But in terms of actually trying to be that bit nicer, yes, sometimes I go out of my way to not be the
Yeah,
sassy
yeah, yeah,
sassy
yeah.
woman.
And some people would say, well, why do you have to work harder, or why do you have to be more sassy or so firm or aggressive? And it's almost like, well, why do I need to be that other person to make a point and to prove that I can do the job?
Yeah.
I'm bringing my whole self to work. So, however, my whole self manifests in my performance at work, that's what matters, right? As long as you're not being blatantly being disrespectful. So yeah, quite interesting point. I thought I'd pull that out because it is natural and it's natural for us to be tagged. We need to work harder or you're angry or aggressive. So that's cool. Thank you for that. So in closing then, we want to kind of touch on some key bullet points in terms of top tips to take away for females, black females, as to what they can do, and then we'll flip it to actually look at what companies can do to attract more talent, to have a diverse workforce, diverse innovation that complements and fulfill their end customer needs. So, over to you in terms of what companies can do. What do you think companies can do to attract um, talents from a diverse background? And I'll cover off some from a personal perspective that women or individuals can do later on.
Okay, from an organizational perspective, I think organizations just need to, again, just be conscious of how they're advertising their roles. Because if you want more women to apply for the role, at the end of the day, we need to make the actual role type applicable to women. It needs to be friendly in terms of how it looks, how it's presented,
Yes.
and making sure that the women in the organization, because there are women in these organizations, making sure that they are in positions where they're able to actually not necessarily advertise the role, but just putting their faces in terms of presentations,
Mm-hmm.
having their faces at the front of your company, so that when looking at a role or looking at a company that I'm going to apply for, I know that there are people like me in that company already. So I'm
Role
not going to
models.
be the
Yeah.
token person where I'm going to be there for 3 months, feel uncomfortable, and want to leave. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that organizations can do. Absolutely open up their talent pool, open up the way in which they're recruiting.
Yeah, yeah, and I think to add on to some of your areas there as well, it's about connecting with these younger women or at an early age. So it could be via a STEM program, with a science, technology, engineering, mathematics program. Engage with schools and partnerships with organization that is more female dominated as well. I think from there you can start to really hone your skills and kind of put your branding out there to make sure that they see that you're interested in what they're doing and your company is something that is a company that is worth trying out for a job spec or a job application. Yeah. So I think from my perspective, then from an individual perspective, and this is just my thought process, you can rebut me as a female, but it's a case of being don't be intimidated by the roles, and even if you don't see a female there, it doesn't mean that there's not a space there for you. You're as good as any other person or even better, and be confident about your skills and what you have to offer. And what you have to offer counts because you're a consumer if you're not an employee of that organization. So just be confident. Network and get a really good mentor. A mentor is very, very important in anyone's life, both personal and professional. So get a mentor, do networking events, and get your name out there. And keep on learning, learning, reading, and explore what's out there in terms of opportunities. And there are places where you probably won't see an opportunity, but by virtue of being in a network or even to broach the idea, opportunities could present itself And the last point I want to make is that if there's nothing out there for you, or you can't get anything, create something. Create your own thing and make that thing shine, because by you doing that, it's like, well, I'm down, but I'm not out. And not because you don't have something from me over there. It means that I can't create and be my own person and do my own thing. So those are some of the top tips I can offer as well going forward. Anything else from you?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I couldn't have said it better. In regards to that mentoring piece, I couldn't agree more with having a mentor. I don't think I could be where I am today without
Yeah.
mentoring, and not just getting mentorship from people like yourself, all different. I've had male, I've had white men, I've had white women, I've had black women, and it's about making sure that you get that wide view and that wide spectrum of talent, really, for you
Yeah,
to learn.
yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. And never limit yourself and kind of belittle yourself, because everybody have to start somewhere. And no matter where you are on that path, there's always better at the end of the tunnel, or that journey. It's a journey, and everyone is on their own journey and their own path. It's just how focused you are and how determined you are for that. So great stuff. I think we've nailed it today with that, and hopefully next time we could probably have a panel discussion of diverse individuals. Get some Asians, some Indians,
absolutely.
and some Chinese, etc., to kind of really give their perspective and kind of bring it all together, because I'm conscious that it's just us talking about it now, but I think that's something that we can explore. Sheila, thank you very much. Very insightful as always,
Uh,
in your contribution.
Thank you for having me, Clinton.
Yes. All right, guys, that's it for now. My name is Clinton Walker. You've been watching Talk InfoSec on the topic of diversity and inclusion in technology and cybersecurity with my colleague Sheila Dos Santos. Please remember to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We are on Overcast, Pocket Cast, and Spotify in terms of listening to our podcast and watching us on YouTube. Thank you very much for watching. You've been listening to Talk InfoSec.
Thank you. Bye.